Well, hi, Paul. Thanks for joining me. It's great to get some time together. Much as we'd like to be in person, we can't be at the moment, so we're not in the same building, but I'd love to know just a bit about how you're doing, where you are, and how life has looked over these past few months for you.
Thank you, Tim. It's great to be here. It's been challenging, but there have also been some great opportunities. On a personal level, I'm married to Ruth. We have 4 children between the ages of 1 and 10. And between March and September, for that period of 6 months, there was no school. We were all here together. And that was great and had some great upsides, but it also was tough too. On the plus side, we got a Nintendo Switch just at the start of lockdown and a trampoline. And during that time also, we've incubated some eggs. So we are now the proud owners of 4 new chickens and a cockerel, which is great. And then at a work level, certainly the first few months were intense, but great too, in that I think over probably the first 8 weeks, we accelerated 5 years in some of our digital engagements. Clearly, we had to work remotely. And also, we detected an increased appetite for the Bible. And we've tried to respond to that in ways that are appropriate and sensitive. So opportunities, but definitely some challenges too.
I feel personally like I've aged about 5 years in about 5 months. So I'm glad to hear that you feel like you've been efficient and made the most of the time. Congratulations to you, Paul, on your appointment as CEO for LICC. We're so excited to have you with us. But it's not like you're jumping in the deep end without knowing how to swim. You have played a role on LICC's board for a number of years, helping shape the strategy of the Institute. So you're clearly an advocate for the whole life discipleship cause. What is it about LICC's mission that you find compelling?
Well, Tim, thank you. I'm really excited about being here and the opportunity ahead of me. LICC's mission is compelling because it's everything. Its mission literally is everything. It is life-changing. It's world-changing. If we are serious about living our lives as Jesus would live them, if he were us, in this moment, in the different spaces and places that we're in, then that affects the totality of everything. If we're serious about being whole life disciples, we're concerned about the planet and living sustainably. If we're serious about being whole life disciples, we take issues of global poverty and injustice seriously. We'll want to engage in politics and media and the arts and education and business and science. It impacts everything. It really is life-changing. And that is what's so compelling. That's what's so exciting. And of course, that's what John Stott understood when he set up LICC in 1982. And of course, with his book as well, Issues Facing Christians Today, he wanted to demonstrate the relevance of Christianity in the contemporary world. I don't know a better way of doing that than for all of God's people to live and apply their experience of God's kingdom in the everyday. That's what's compelling. That's what's exciting.
You've excited me already. I want to join in. How do I get involved? Well, before we get too excited about vision and strategy for the future, I'd love to know a little bit more about how God has brought you to this moment. So when in your life did whole life discipleship become more than an idea to you? And how has that played out in your everyday, on your front line?
I think the first thing to say, Tim, is that it did firstly have to become an idea. I don't think I always understood whole life discipleship in the way that I'd understand it now. And of course, that was also true of John Stott, that he grew in his understanding of the implications of the gospel. The fact that that was not only about an individual and their relationship with God at a personal level, but that it had implications that were world-changing. That if we are serious about loving God and loving our neighbour, then we have to get involved in the world and in the issues that the world presents to us. So I had to grow in that understanding. And I guess I grew in that understanding at college, particularly as I studied theology. I had some great lecturers, not least Mark Greene, lectured me in communications. And it was through that period of time that I understood and grew in excitement about what the gospel was. And the fact that this was about God coming in the person of Jesus Christ and putting the world to rights, and that I was being invited into that too, that I'm invited to play my part in this big story of God and the world. And so when I finished theology, it seemed really natural for me. It seemed logical to leave theology and go and work in Parliament, in politics, on the basis that if I was serious about loving God and my neighbour as myself, it made sense to get involved in the institutions that had an impact on the lives of my neighbours, perhaps especially the poorest and most vulnerable in society.
Great to hear. Great to hear. And in terms of your professional roles, your rather intimidating CV tells me that you've been active in politics, as you mentioned. You founded the think tank Theos. You've worked at Bible Society as their deputy chief exec, and you've also completed a degree and a master's in theology while working on your PhD on Wilberforce's use of the Bible at the moment. So how do all of these experiences tie together, and how have they helped you prepare for this new position at LICC?
Well, it's all about whole life discipleship, isn't it? I think I've been prepared missionally, but also operationally or functionally, if you like. Missionally, I've been prepared in that whether it's working in Parliament or public affairs, whether it's in Theos or Bible Society, and there the name suggests everything, Bible and society, the integration of the two, that is all an outworking of whole life discipleship. So my conviction about the significance of LICC's mission has grown through that period. And the work that I've done has been in some ways about trying to apply the mission of LICC to the different arenas that I've been in. So obviously within politics, I've attempted to think Christianly about politics and try and work out how that can be done in a way that is authentic biblically and Christianly. And similarly, Theos is all about trying to connect, make connections and encourage a conversation around faith and society, Christianity and society, and the contribution that makes, and the idea that it's not just a private thing, that it's public. The good news is public. The gospel is public. I mean, it's one of the extraordinary things, isn't it, about Jesus, that when he announces the good news, when Jesus talks about the gospel and the kingdom of God, in the context of the first century, they are profoundly political, public terms. He's using this language to talk about what God is doing in the world. So all of that has had a massive impact on me and has shaped me. And obviously that's been significant in my academic study. I'm hugely excited by Wilberforce and others who were campaigning against the slave trade. They understood this. If there's a rogues gallery somewhere of those that have taken whole life discipleship seriously, you'd have to include people like Wilberforce in it, because he understood, though it took him a while to understand, but he did understand that if he was serious about his faith, then being involved in the world of politics was a natural implication. It wasn't a distraction, it wasn't a diversion, it was core. And of course, he understood that, took that seriously, and was serious about the Bible and serious about politics and serious about opposing slavery. Sometimes he was having to campaign and disagree and debate with those that used the Bible to promote the cause of slavery, which was amazing. But all of that, it has, I think, resourced me, helped me, developed me in this area of the mission of LICC, whole life discipleship. And then, of course, functionally, in terms of leading organizations and developing strategies and trying to ensure that those organizations are having the impact that they're intended to have and are effective. Hopefully that's given me some tools that can be used for the cause of LICC.
That's great to hear. I'm very excited. And LICC itself is going through an exciting phase at the moment. There seems to be a real momentum in the cause, and there's a number of new team members joining, bringing their expertise and enthusiasm. As you look to the future, Paul, what do you think might be possible? And what are your prayerful hopes and dreams for how God might work through LICC?
Yeah, I mean, this is a moment of huge opportunity. It's a significant moment, I think, organizationally, for the reasons that you've described. It's also a significant moment culturally, partly because of what we were saying earlier about the openness, I think, there is to the Christian faith, openness to perhaps engaging with whole life discipleship in a way there might not have been before. The encouraging thing is that the language of whole life discipleship is increasingly part of the language of the church. The challenge is often that there is a dissonance between the language that is used and then the practice. And, you know, I'm exercised by the failure of the church, of which I, of course, am a part and am therefore responsible, but the failure of the church to equip people for the task of being whole life disciples. in the contemporary world. But the ambition is that we can grow LICC, not in terms of the organization's infrastructure. That's not what we're about. That should never be an end in and of itself. But we grow the mission, the impact, the effectiveness, the reach, the diversity of LICC. That increasingly we want to see more and more people, more and more Christians taking this agenda seriously. It's through individual Christians on the ground living as God's people that God's kingdom will be seen, and that people will want to respond to that. They'll see what it looks like to flourish as a human being. And so that is the vision, isn't it? That's the ambition. We want to see more people responding to that. We want to see more people being fully alive. One of the theologians that I really like is Irenaeus, who talks about the glory of God being seen in a human being fully alive. And in a way, that's quite a good description of LICC's mission, that we're about seeing people fully alive in the places where they are, making a difference. Why? Well, that's good for them, but ultimately it's great for the world. And so that's the ambition. And it's audacious, it's exciting, but I think we're up for that. And I think it's also an important reminder that John Stott was audacious in his vision and ambition for the cause. He, despite appearing as he did from the background that he had, he was a radical. And he was serious about seeing the world change. And of course, that was something that he grew into himself. He developed, his understanding changed over time. And he understood the importance of taking all these things seriously, all these issues seriously, and engaging effectively as Christians. And so that's part of the ambition. That's what's so exciting.
Yeah, and talking of big personalities like Irenaeus and John Stott, it's worth mentioning that Mark Greene will be staying on with LICC in his new role of mission champion. Mark, a big personality, of course. How do you feel about your predecessor continuing to champion the cause as part of the LICC team?
Well, I'm absolutely thrilled about that. I think it's unusual to have the opportunity that I've got coming into LICC to work alongside my predecessor, but also someone that has and will continue to make such a significant contribution, not least through their speaking and their written work. I was massively impacted by Thank God It's Monday. I've already said I was lectured by Mark. I've known him probably for about 25 years. And I myself have been a beneficiary of LICC. LICC has helped equip me to take whole life discipleship seriously. And therefore to work alongside Mark, to have him sticking around, to have him amplifying the mission of LICC in the different contexts in which he's in is fantastic. And we want to see everyone in the organization and all our supporters playing to their strengths. And this area of writing and speaking absolutely has to be Mark's strength. So I'm looking forward to that and feel that I'm privileged to have that opportunity.
That's great. Thanks. So lastly, we'd love to be praying for you as you step into your new role and asking God's blessing both on the transition and the work ahead. So how can we be best praying for you and for LICC over these coming months?
Thank you, Tim. I really appreciate that. I think, firstly, the transition, both leaving and starting well. This is a significant period for me and for the wider family. It'd be great if people could pray for that. Secondly, around listening and learning, I'll come into LICC and it's an opportunity to lift the bonnet and to see what works and how it works, to get to know people. That will be significant for me and the whole staff team at LICC. So please pray for that. And then thirdly, I'd really appreciate prayers that I would model the change that we seek as an organisation, that I would be a more effective whole life disciple. If people could pray in those terms, that would be amazing. I'd be hugely grateful.
Thanks for that, Paul. It's been great to talk together. And rest assured, we are praying for you and are full of excitement for what God has in store. Bye for now.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.